Usually this time of the year when the hay fever and the pollen kick in and I start to sneeze, and Alan McCallum and I would usually get together and talk about relevant Orioles baseball. But in lieu of that, I'm going to get together with Alan McCallum and talk about anything I want to get together with Alan McCallum about. Man, so much on the docket, dude. I looked down and saw that the last time you and I chatted, I think the Orioles were still like maybe a couple of games under 500 or whatever, and the season wasn't over, although we all knew it was headed in that direction. There was some optimism, at least for the first week or two, so we at least could say we had March. But, now we're into this, right? I mean, we're into this period here where I'm trying to put it on. I'm trying to take it seriously. Luke and I have gone back and forth, on a minimal basis. And I'm not doing a lot of Oriole baseball. I'm doing a lot of Baltimore Positive. I have Dr. Freeman Rabowski on Thursday from State Fair at Catonsville, Allen. But, my man, I want to have you on more often. I want to sit here and chew the fat about things. And I know the draft's next week, and we're all going to be Adley Rutschman guys and all that stuff. But I don't know on a day-by-day basis what we can talk about with this team that doesn't become either macabre or comedic, because I sort of try to watch it every night and pay attention to it, and I don't know how we're going to hold on to this, man.
Nestor, I really don't know what you're talking about. I mean, the 2019 Baltimore Orioles are the most successful team in Major League Baseball right now, period.
Sounds like Masson to me. Sounds like
they are doing exactly what they are designed to do, and that is lose. This team has been put together so that they can have another year of first round of the first pick in the draft, and the most relevant shot on the waiver wires, and to rebuild. So I mean that's the reality.
Yeah, when you're not trying to win, I guess it's easy to lose, right?
Right. So look, we talked about this before the season started. I mean, they have more talent in the minor leagues than they have on the major league level. And they're doing that. And look, again, I think that there's a lot of relevance to having the recipe be cooked, all the ingredients be cooked before you put them in, right? I believe in apprenticeship. I think it makes sense to have young guys down so that you can keep the payroll low, so that you can spend more money when it's ready, so that they can be ready when they come up to the big leagues, or as ready as they're going to be, to help service time. All of those things are relevant. So, that makes sense. But the reality is there are players in the minor leagues, and we can debate who they are, who should be at the major league level, beginning their career, ready to hone their craft and see where they are. And it doesn't make logistical sense for the team to bring them up right now. So, that's the reality of where they are. And as fans, once you go into rebuild, you know that these things are going to happen in today. Now, I will say this. I still believe they're the right guys for the rebuild, and we've debated analytics. I think that there are both pros and cons, but obviously that's the way the game is going today. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to say, well, if we're just going to put the worst team we can on the field so we can get great draft picks. When that happens, that's a formula that's always been available, and the Orioles fans are going to have to go with it. Now, you mentioned Masson, and I've heard a lot of this statement a lot over the last couple of months. I hope the fans understand what's happening right now and support the team. And I think that that's sort of to me, real fans know what's going on. Fans understand. To lose means having all these things in place in the next couple of years so that 4 or 5 years from now you have a great team with a good pipeline. I get that. And I think most of the fans do as well. The question is, does that mean you have to spend money, your hard-earned money, to go out and watch an inferior product?
Well, Alan, this is where I was going to jump in and say, have you been to the ballpark yet?
I have been to the ballpark.
You have been. How many times?
Twice.
Twice. Okay. And notable in any way? Did they blow a lead? Was it interesting? Did you see pretty girls? Did the fireworks go off? Good weather. Good experience.
I took my girlfriend to her first baseball game, so that was a good time. It was the first one was the first game of the doubleheader against the Twins, and they lost by 1 run. They put up a good showing. Saw a couple of cool games, a couple runs. Got to see Jonathan Scope.
Well, the real story is here. You girlfriend? What?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So first game ever? She'd never been to a game?
She'd never been to a baseball game.
Oh, wow. Well, you guys are going to have an interesting relationship now, aren't you?
So it was fun, and the second time was fun too. I mean, because I love baseball, but I mean, you go understanding that there is little access to watching the Orioles win, except for the occasional one-off, and that's fine.
Well, one of the real problems is just like not having a dog in the hunt, and other than the uniform that the bird on the hat or the cartoon bird or whatever. Here's a fascinating story. My wife and I took a walk around the city on Memorial Day. She wanted to go out and watch me sneeze, and wanted to get beer with people, and we wound up at Amici's like we always do, right? So we're walking through the city, and we were just turned the corner at the Four Seasons, and we had gone up to the Bygone because she had never been up there and seen the view and whatnot. Took a couple pictures of her. We came down. And we go out of the Four Seasons. Like, we didn't even get a drink. Right? It was hot. It was 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And somehow a bus pulled up, and I sort of fell back a little bit. There was nobody around. It was very empty. It was very deserted. And a guy gets off the bus and looked a little bit like Sparky Anderson's, long-lost nephew, And there's a Detroit Tigers.
Right?
Totally looked like the skipper on Gilligan's Island. And had a Tiger bag. And the next guy had a Tiger bag, and I faded back, and then everybody that got off the bus was either Latin or had a beard, and they were all 20-something, and they all looked like baseball players before the steroid era, not the baseball players, not the Scott Erickson, David Segui. Most of their foreheads were in line, and, they looked like they were still walking upright, not like Barry Bonds. And I watched all these guys get off the bus. And there were two Detroit Tigers fans to my left, a husband, wife, maybe 30 years old, taking a picture of the guys. There were nobody else around, no security, no nothing, just us. And I watched 30 guys get off the bus, and I'm like, that's the Detroit Tigers. And I said to my wife, I'm like, that's the Tigers bus. And I'm like, I don't recognize any of them. Like, I'm trying to think who's on the Tigers. You know what I'm saying?
Well, then the same situation the Orioles are in.
No, but then I thought, like, literally, Alan, I swear, 12 guys off the bus.
Right.
I turned to my wife, and a couple of guys came off with, like, orange bags with an Oriole bird. And, and I'm like, is this an Oriole bus? Are they going to, like, a party upstairs for, like, a post-game dinner or memorial? I thought this could have been the Orioles, right? Like, It was clearly the Tigers bus. But it could have been the Orioles bus because I would not know who Rio Ruiz is or Dan Straley if he walked off the bus because that's how anonymous all of these cats are right now.
Well, and that's the other. There are a couple other things about this club. One, unless you're just a crazy diehard, it's hard to be invested in them because these guys. Most of these guys are placeholders. Dan Straley's not going to be here in 2 years.
Well, the weird part is if anybody is any good, that all that does is sort of, gets them out of here quicker.
Increase their trade value.
Yeah. So if you perform here, you get sent to the promised land somewhere else, the pennant race maybe.
I mean, look, I don't know what the story's going to be with Trey Mancini. He's obviously having an outstanding season in the middle of a horrible, from winning percentage anyway, season for the Orioles. But I guess the other offshoot of this is that you do find some diamonds in the rough that might be something. Dwight Smith is having, that's certainly not an MVP season, a serviceable season that no one was expecting. He looks like he can be a contributor. John Means is doing well. I mean, the league is starting to adjust, and Colorado certainly didn't help his ERA, but
Colorado doesn't help anyone's ERA.
Right, but he looks like he could be servable. Fry out of the bullpen looks like he's got. We saw him a little bit last year. He looks like he might be something worth paying attention to. We've seen there are a couple of pieces that look like they might have found something. Those guys are likely going to be here for another couple of years. Trey Mancini is another story, and the question is how valuable is it to have someone people can root for and recognize on the club. Who might actually be able to help you in a couple of years. Now, he's not 23. He's a little bit older, but it's still not 30. And could be a player that, he's versatile, he moves around a little
Well, he
bit.
seems like a great guy, too. I mean, through all of it, from the minute he came up, he's a likable chap.
And Adam Jones wanted to stay. They traded him. Jonathan Scope could have come back. They didn't go and get him. To have an inexpensive quality player who the fans can appreciate is a valuable thing. If you want anybody to come to the ballpark, that's a valuable thing.
Well, that being said, he's here now and nobody's coming to the ballpark. So
that's fair enough. But again, is it fair to ask fans to spend hard-earned money on a product that is clearly inferior when you're not spending money because you want it to be good 2 or 3 years from now?
I joked with my friends at Amici's the other day. I said, if you told me your sauce would be good 3 years from now, come back then, I would come back 3 years from now when your sauce is good. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to serve it to me cold and I like it hot. You know what I mean? Then I'll just stay away until the food gets better. You know what I mean? That's what I would do with any other business. That's what anybody would do. That's what we do to bad movies. That's what we do on bad beach days. We don't go to the beach because we all have like this calendar and busy things and lives. And I love you and I can barely get breakfast with you once a year. And we do radio 5-10 times a year, So, and less lately because quite frankly, as my mom would say, there's less of a calling for it, and...
But it's not just in baseball. It's not just the Orioles. Basketball, this has been a problem. In the NFL, it's not so much because teams can get better faster.
Dude, who's watching the Stanley Cup Finals if you're not a Boston Bruins fan or St. Louis Blues bleeding heart? The NBA Finals, more people watch it. It's a global, it is what it is, and it's interesting that it's international and Steph Curry. But to your point, it has like stars, Kawhi Leonard, star. Steph Curry, star. Klay Thompson, star, Durant, if he plays, star, yeah.
Right. And a lot of people, want to see the stars. And I'm not so much based in that, but I want to see quality play. And I know that's not necessary. Now, Richie Martin can't hit. Richie Martin can play shortstop, and I enjoy that. The other piece of this is that for the first time I bought the MLB package. Why? Because I moved and I got rid of cable.
Because you wanted to hear John Miller, be honest.
So I didn't have access to Masson, and I bought the MLB package, but the Orioles and the Nats are blacked out for 90 minutes until 90 minutes after the game has ended. So I can watch literally any other baseball game except the one except the ones in the region. So I have to wait to put myself through the misery of watching the team. So that to me also doesn't make any sense. If you're gonna if you know your product's going to be bad, why penalize people for actually being interested in trying to see it? Now, I often usually do, but I'm listening. If I'm not at the ballpark, I'm listening to it on the radio, so I know what happened. But to be able to visualize and really be able to see, what these players have, what is keeping, how good is John Means changeup? What's, the Sean Armstrong's actual delivery and windup? How do these things look? Is Dwight Smith playing too deep in the outfield when balls fall in? These are things that you can only really see for yourself if you're watching the game. So I, usually have to wait for 90 minutes, which usually means I'm watching it in the middle of the night. And I think that's kind of ludicrous. That's another problem for this, that in the digital age, in a world where people are moving farther and farther away from cable, the Orioles are still in the Stone Age a bit with that. And, again, you ask the fans.
Well, by the way, can I ask you, go finish your thought, because I got major thoughts for you, Alan.
Sure.
I didn't know this was going to be this much fun or this interesting, because I have some great thoughts for you. So go ahead.
You're asking the fans to be forced to be pigeonholed. People watch stuff. How many people watch TV? People watch things on their computer. People watch things on their phones. Can people watch stuff on their iWatches yet? I don't know. But if it can't yet, it's coming soon. So, to ask people to be attached to the 20th century, well, let's say 2008, is a world that is going to leave you behind. And I think we've seen that in every industry, not just baseball or the Orioles, but it's certainly relevant today in Baltimore.
He is Alan McCallum. He is my longtime friend, foil, sometimes foe, but always friend in regard to Oriole baseball. All of our WNST coverage, we got great sponsors around here. I want to give a shout out to literally everybody because we keep adding sponsors. State Fair and Freeman Rabowski, the good doctor, are going to join us on Thursday. UMBC and all the Baltimore positive stuff we're doing around here. Big shout out to Don Moeller for his partnership on that. Charles Newsonoff and Sons in Parkville. Go see Sydney. My wife's wedding ring actually broke last year, and Sydney fixed it. So if he can do that for her, he can do that for you. 50% off the bands this week if you see Sydney over in Parkville. Full circle, back with us. Dave, I think Dave did the Nasty Van many, many moons ago. He does tires, and more tires, and they do the 1995 oil change. It's at Full Circle, Tire and Auto. Full Circle, 410-676-CARS. 676-CARS is the way to find them. While you're up in Hartford County, our friends also at Adams Extreme Motorsports. We'll be doing some Raven shows up there, so I'm giving love to everybody up in Hartford County, all of our sponsors. Lee Tessier, we got them coming out every Box Hill Crab Cakes, everybody in Hartford County supporting us. We appreciate that. Alan, I want to go in a bunch of different directions. And I'm going to save the John Angelos thing for the end, okay? I'll save that but for a couple of minutes, I just want to throw this at you. I'm obviously doing Baltimore positive. I'm moving a lot of different things in my life this summer. One of them is I'm not sitting here and taking the Orioles seriously 5 hours a night because, bro, I just can't do it. I don't,
Sure.
I'm 50 years old. My mind's distracted by, cities, issues in the city and crime and business and my business and your life and concerts and things, So the baseball thing came to me here, and I had a long extended period, Memorial Day, and I have all of these old mini discs, and I'm going to hold them up on the air for people here to see. These are mini discs in the old days, and this one's the San Diego Super Bowl, and I found all sorts of old school stuff. Here's a good one for you, Alan. This one tape, and it's all Ray Bachman's handwriting. In 1 week, Juan Dixon, Matt Cavanaugh, Edwin Molitalo, Sidney Ponson, remember him? John Stevens, Lionel Dalton, Doug Mankiewicz, Bert Blyleven, Will Demps, Ed Hartwell. So this is in 2002. So I went through and I got a lot of the stuff off, and what I've really focused on doing, Alan, and maybe you'll have an appreciation, and this is a little bit of a pimpage for my summer programming here, because anybody that's tuned in knows I've done some best of lately, and I'm digging that and breaking out some old school stuff. I'm finding all of the Hall of Fame baseball players and associated people that I've ever had on my show, and I made the list, and I did it on my phone the other night because I literally went through the emails I had and all of my lists. And I'm just going through the number. So I think the week that Messina goes in the Hall, I'm going to take a down week. Now, I'm not really going on vacation because I'm doing this Baltimore positive thing. So instead of running around the world, doing what I do, taking pictures, going to North Pole, South Pole, the Caribbean, things I like doing, I'm going to present in the summer, at least that week, I've come up with this Baseball Hall of Fame thing. How interesting you think this is going to be, some of these chats, Alan?
I know you usually go in depth with people and find questions that aren't necessarily the run of the mill. So I think that'll be very interesting for a lot of people.
My man, so I've found interviews that I've done in the course of my career that I already have archived. Like Tony Gwynn, you can't get him on the phone anymore, right?
No.
Earl Weaver, Frank Robinson, the obvious things. But I've had these chats that have never been presented before or have never aired. Like John Schuerholz. He and I have talked 5 or 6 times about all sorts of things. Towson University, the Kansas City Royals, Bobby Cox, pitching, Baltimore, growing up in Baltimore, all of that kind of stuff. And I've also found the Ernie Accorsi stuff on the football side too. I'm going to give you a list of the stuff I already have literally done and found and edited. You ready?
Sure.
Tommy Lasorda, Earl Weaver, Frank Robinson, Brooks Robinson, Tony Gwynn, Cal Ripken, Bert Blyleven, Andre Dawson, some guys aren't in the Hall of Fame, like Roger Clemens. I consider him a Hall of Famer, so I'm throwing his name out there.
Sure.
John Schuerholz, Bruce Bochy will be in the Hall of Fame, so I've got him. Rod Carew, Dave Winfield, who stopped by the barn that night 23 years ago.
That.
I have that picture, so I found that audio, by the way. George Brett, you grabbed him at the field for me one day. So any guy you ever grabbed who was a Hall of Famer, who you put on the phone with me. Harold Baines is now one of those guys, by the way. Dennis Eckersley is one of those guys. Jack Morris, Wade Boggs, Glavin, Smoltz, and Maddox. Robbie Alomar sat with me in the lobby of the Marriott in Fort Lauderdale for an hour. So did Pat Gillick, who is also a Hall of Famer. How about Trevor Hoffman? He's a Hall of Famer. Gary Carter, who used to call into my national show all the time at the turn of the century, Hall of Famer.
Can't talk to him anymore either.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Garagiola. Ernie Harwell. John Miller sat in my studio and sobbed after Peter Angelos fired him. I found the tapes. Yeah. Bob Costas has been on my show a half dozen times. Ross Newhan, Bob Elliott, Dan Shaughnessy, Jason Stark, Marvin Miller, who should be in the Hall of Fame. So these are Don Fear and Fay Vincent. So
wow.
and Lucchino. So that is the list that I have. Lucchino's not in the Hall, but he will be. Yeah. So that is the list of everything I have already done. That's already done, and I don't have to chase anybody. That is a week of radio there in July, the week that I left Messina off the list. Damn. Messina. Throw him in there, too. He's a Hall of Famer now, right?
You should probably save him for the Sunday.
Well, I mean, and then there's the borderline, like the Kurt Schillings, who I've had extensive conversations with. He's probably never going to get in. But it is amazing how much of this stuff that I've found, and I've culled over 28 years of conversation. So
my favorite moment on radio, I was in the studio, and I can't remember who I was with.
Oh, do tell.
You were. It must have been the All-Star break, and you were at the All-Star game. And Schilling, I guess, hadn't made it in that year, and he calls the radio station, and we were like, thanks for calling in. Nestor's not here. He's like, I don't want to talk to Nestor. I want to talk to you. And we went on to have a 15, 20-minute conversation with Kurt Schilling that day. It was like the proudest radio moment I've ever had.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And now you can listen to his show anytime you want.
We wouldn't agree much on politics, I can tell you that. But the guy knew how to pitch. You
know what I found from Kurt, and well, first, so we're going to talk about Kurt. I DJ'd his wedding. His wife is my best friend growing up. All of that, and Kurt and I do not agree on much. Kurt Schilling found time in his day, okay, the day in St. Louis that they won the World Series. It was Game 5, whatever that was, right?
Sure.
That day, Kurt called me because I was filling in, I guess. No, I was still on the radio. It was 04. I was still doing daily radio. It was the end of my, that part of my career. He called in from the hotel in St. Louis and talked in the, I hope we win tonight. I hope we win the World Series tonight. I hope tonight's the night. And we had an extensive conversation about the bloody sock, literally 8 days after the bloody sock. So, wow. And it was a 15-minute, I found it the other day.
I was going to say, that's when you need to put on the air.
Okay, so he's not a Hall of Famer, but I'm going to break rank and say, I'm going to run that. So I found all of this wild stuff, bro. Wild stuff that I had forgotten I had done. When Frank Robinson died, I think I famously told you that I didn't think I ever talked to him, and then I found the tape where he did.
You did tell me that.
He did call into my national show. Cliffy Saunders got him on. It was when he was the sheriff, right? When he was meting out fines, and there had been some fight or some brush. I don't know. It was an incident, and he did the show with me, and I actually ran it opening day week, because opening day week, I found my Earl Weaver chats. I found a lot of Mike Flanagan conversations at WNST. Strangely enough, I have yet to find one between me and Mike Flanagan, and I am in search of that. So I'm missing my John Wooden conversation. There's some stuff that's missing, Alan, but I'm 50, right? And if I don't find it all now and put it together now, I'm probably never going to do it. And incidentally, the following week is the week that Billy Joel is in Baltimore and my mom's 100th birthday. I think that week I am going to present in entirety every rock and roll Hall of Fame interview I've ever done. And I think there's something like 45 of those, and there's a dozen of them I've never transcribed. You know, Joan Jett, people that have just gotten into the Hall of Fame recently, Def Leppard, just bands, and I'm kind of amazed at how much of this stuff I've culled, and literally it's never aired. I mean, a lot of this stuff only aired. The Frank Robinson thing, it aired that one afternoon on Sporting News Radio in 1999, if you were listening at 4:20 in the afternoon, and it's been sitting on one of these discs for 21 years, you know what I mean? And
Sure.
I'm finally finding some of this stuff. So it's heartening to me during a summer where, quite frankly, I don't have you at the ballpark anymore. It's really neat to hear. Dun, 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 dun.
Good times, man.
You remember George Hipp and the orchestra, Legends 1360 Orchestra?
I hear that in my sleep sometimes.
Well, I have it on mini disc if you'd like to hear it. Alan McCallum is here. All right, so I want to get to this because this is important because you said something to me. You know, you were in fanboy mode of rebuild and this and that, and John Angelos, we all understand what they're doing and all that. I ran into John Angelos on Preakness Day, Alan.
Okay.
So I'm out at the track. There's nobody there. They're trying to kill the race. The tents are 110 degrees. It's 95 outside. It's 110 in the tent. The drinks were outside. I ran into tons of people. I was alone. My wife wasn't with me. I dressed comfortably, so I never really got out of hand hot. I wasn't miserable. I expected it. And I look up, and there's John Angelos with a woman. I don't even know who. I mean, he was just with a woman with a hat. And there was a little whispering, and then all of a sudden, I got the eye that said, "Don't come over here," right?
Right.
And I thought to myself, if I go over there, what am I going to say? Like, where would I begin? The first thing I probably would begin with, and I learned this at the Preakness after a couple of drinks with a colleague of mine, I learned that John Vitelin, literally, one of the first things he did when he got to Baltimore was read my letter. Like, that John Vitelin really did read my letter. Like, that's for sure, all 8 pages of it, honest to God. I have no note that John Angelos has actually read the letter that I wrote to him last summer. And I read that letter on the air. I wrote that letter in writing. I would have licked an envelope and a stamp and sent it to him by a carrier pigeon or faxed it if I really thought he would have read it. I tagged him on Twitter to see that he would read it because I really did read it. I wrote it for him. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
I thought to myself, the thing I would have said after the first or second drink, and I really wasn't drinking, so it wasn't like one of those issues where, and I'm assuming he wasn't either. He looked sober. I was sober, right? And we were in the governor's tent, and he had avoided me twice on this pathway. And I got into the tent. There was nobody in the tent. There was a band playing, and I'm talking to the Anne Arundel County executive, Stuart Pittman, and I'm talking to Ross Petticord, my old horse racing buddy who works for Hogan now, works for the state. And I see him, and the governor's wife's there, and he's there, and the woman he's with, wants no part of me. And so I'm like, it's Preakness Day. You know what I mean? What am I going to go up and say to him? You know what I mean? So I'm going to give that to you, Alan, after all of our relationship, knowing that I've only spoken to John Angelos once in my life. We were in the dugout in Fort Lauderdale freezing at 6:52 in the morning. He was on the back of one of those. It wasn't like even a golf cart. It was kind of like one of those trucks that they take sod and stuff around the fields. And I said, "Hey, John, you want to come on, talk to us this morning about the team?" He waved us off, and that's it. So I've never really spoken to John Angelos. I've never had a word with him. So I just figure if I walk up to him, I'm going to get more of like the orange hookah lounge, cowboy boot conversation. I mean, I don't want to talk to somebody if he has to lie to me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not really down with that. So like I really don't know what I would say to him, but I've questioned that in the aftermath, and I'm leaving it for better people like you.
Let's be honest. I mean, you're a divisive figure for the Orioles, and you speak your mind. And I don't know that necessarily, that translates from the father down to the son. And I'm sure that they have there's fear and issue in there. But
wouldn't it be nice if they talked to me? You know what I mean?
It would be nice. Look, you want the best owners in sports can't be sports if are the best if they're fans. Won't be best if they talk all the time. The best owners spend money, hire good people, and get the heck out of the way. I truly believe that. Sure, you want to know what you want to know what they think and feel sometimes. Certainly in times of crisis or in times of victory.
I don't think there's any getting out of the way, Al. I mean, maybe in the public perception you can get out of the way. I've been to those NFL owners meetings. Dude, there's nobody who's not in the way. You know what I mean? I'm not being I'm just like that.
Right.
That is really, really not realistic. You know, that is Pollyanna, and it's media talk, and it's wonderful, but that's not really – the owner really is involved – even with his lack of involvement.
That they have to be, right? That's fine. But you certainly want them to err on the side. Look, if you're an owner, you only see your team as a money-making commodity, you might be successful, but you're probably not going to do things that are always in the best interest of the fans or the team. If you are an owner and you only do things because you love the team and you want to win, you're probably not going to do things that are in the best interest of the fans or the team. Having a healthy combination of those two things so that you can be a viable organization, so that you can make money and that you can sustain that for an extended period of time, makes a lot of sense. When the moment comes and someone says, look, we're close, we need the X player, we need to either spend this money or trade to take this contract, this will help put us over the top, and you do it, having had an eye on a responsible budget and having been involved in making good choices for executives, front office types, so that they can put a team together, then you go with your gut in those moments. You go with what the people who you've hired to speak for you tell you. And in those moments, it makes a lot of sense. So, look, I don't know. I've met both of the sons at different times. I'm not going to tell you we've had any lengthy or tangible conversations.
By the way, I'm reading my letter right now, just like the beginning of it, and this is literally like what I would say to them if I ran into them. You know what I mean? Like, I have nothing to be embarrassed. I mean, I'm 50 years old.
So.
You know what I mean? Like, sure. I wrote this. I would read it to them. If they were sitting here, I'd read it to them. Literally, I've witnessed all of this. They've witnessed all of this. If they're not reaching to people like me to help them out, then God bless them. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like, we're still the last people that care. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, there's nobody left that cares. And that's really the sad part about all of it. So, I'm not sorry I didn't go up and say hello. They clearly didn't want me to. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I clearly...
Yeah, there's no point in having a conversation with someone if you know that
I'm
they're
at
not going
Preakness
to
Day.
talk.
I'm in a hat. I'm with Billy Yerman. I'm having a good time. I'm in the governor's tent. The drinks are free. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need to start a stir with John Angelos. You know what I mean? Like, I would go up and say, did you read my letter? He would either say yes or no. He'd either be telling me the truth or he'd be lying. And that's part of where the issue begins, which is I've sat and watched him in front of the media, basically do that hookah lounge thing 6 months ago and thought, oh, that's who you are. Maybe you are moving the team. You know what I mean? I don't have any sense that that he had a lot of buddies in the infield or that there's any strong... Dude, if there was strong support for his family or the franchise, it wouldn't look the way it looks. I mean, let's be honest.
You brought up a huge issue and one people are tiptoeing around. This rumor that won't go away that Major League Baseball is trying to move the team, or certainly trying to offer them money to have them move the team. I don't know if it's true. Nobody knows. I don't know if anybody knows that it's true, but it would certainly be one of the most nefarious engineered happenings in sports. If it is, they moved a team into a region that the most profitable region of control for a baseball team. Negotiate a contract with them or work out a deal so that they'll have a sports network that is controlled by the Orioles, so that they can be financially viable. Then go on and I know that we disagree on some of this, but a years-long trek to then rescind that control from them, or certainly the financial profit element of it from them, And then at the point when they would neither be viable or successful, for that matter, as they're going through a rebuild, they then begin talking about moving the team. Now, I've heard a lot of people say Camden Yards is a jewel, and baseball wouldn't do that because it would be foolish to walk away from this park, at least at this point in its era. But
they don't care. They don't care. They don't smell money here. The same reason Leon just didn't bring the Stanley Cup up here, and he doesn't have the Wizards up here. They don't smell money here.
Right.
Baltimore is a poor, divided, fractured place that everybody's trying to get out of, including the horse race, right?
Which is why D.C. and that
Which is why I'm doing Baltimore positive, because you're not going to burn my town down, Alan. You know,
the D.C. element of the market was incredibly important for the Orioles, and it was taken away. And
it was squandered away and then taken away. But yes, I hear you. Yes.
When you're in a division with the Yankees and the Red Sox, and the unbalanced schedule forces you to face them a larger amount of time than the balanced schedule would. It makes look, no one's going to argue that the Orioles haven't been run poorly in the Peter Angelos era. I mean, it would be impossible to do that, even with the 5-year run where they were competitive and viable. It's been a poorly run organization, one of the most poorly run in sports in a long time. But they certainly don't have a level playing field with which to function. And it forces you to have to do things better, which they haven't done. But to be in the situation now is really ludicrous. It's ludicrous. So I mean, we're a couple of years away from seeing what's going to happen. But this is certainly a rumor that is worthy of making people concerned for their team, for their franchise, for the longest standing professional sports team in Baltimore at this point. Are they as loved as the Ravens? I guess we could debate that for some degree.
Well, the debate would be, what have they done to deserve to be loved? And this is the time when they're wallowing in last place, where John Angelo should be coming up to me and saying, "Hey, let's get a coffee, man." You know what I mean? Like,
right.
we you seem like a reasonable enough fellow. Enough people around town take you seriously. You trailed around 30 ballparks in 30 days. You still talk about my product. Your last name still is a Hall of Fame last name in this town. Maybe we should get together quietly. Can you keep that off the internet? And I'd be glad to do that.
There's no question that the Orioles.
I'm a grown-up. I don't know if you heard, Alan. I'm 50 years old.
There's no question that the Orioles need to be doing a better job of reaching out to the public, particularly in this moment, to get their product out there, to let people know how they're involved in the community, and to ask people to hang with them through all of this, and that the franchise will be back. I mean, that is something that the organization should be actively pursuing, so that people. Even in a moment when we all know they're going to lose, it's designed and it's hard to sit and watch the product that the team is invested in the area and the community and working hard to make it better for them.
I love how you say that they were designed to lose. I'll just leave you at that. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Alan, I love you, and maybe a ball game or a Stones concert or a Billy Joel thing, or I don't know, man. We'll figure it out. Johnny Swim, something, right?
I'm not in love with their new album. They kind of sold out, but it's still better than most of what's out there right now. There's no question. If you have not heard Rhiannon Giddens, you should. She's an amazing folk musician doing a lot of traditional stuff. So that's amazing. And before we leave, I want to remind everyone that the Hubert Simmons Museum of Negro League Baseball is out at the Owings Mills Library, located at 10302 Grand Central Avenue, Owings Mills, Maryland, 21117. It is a wonderful opportunity to experience the history of Negro League Baseball, some of the greats of Baltimore, and just take yourself on a journey. It's a beautiful facility and worth taking your time to go through.
You got me looking through my pictures now, trying to find the picture of you and me out there a couple weeks ago, because we went out there and toured it. It's on various floors, so you have to move around in order to see all of it.
And heading towards an expansion, so it's small but mighty right now, but it's going to be better as we in the years to come.
All right, I'll find those pictures. Alan McCallum, my dear friend, baseball historian and lover of all things history of baseball, joining us here. And I'll have my Hall of Fame week coming up in July with all the aforementioned names. If anybody sees John Angelos, tell him I said hello, and he can get my people to get his people, and we can find our people. And by the way, I'm still very, very proud of my dear John Note. I stand behind that 100%. All day long. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. We are WNST.net AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking Baltimore sports and baseball and stuff and positive.